Hey guys, John V here from PhoneArena. Right now you're watching our in-depth video comparison between the Apple iPhone 5S and the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. So last week it was all about the iPhone 5S, and as we know, it's a very well-rounded device. And this week we got a new competitor on the scene in the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. It features a redesign and some really enhanced new features with this S Pen and experience. So we're going to see how these two handsets go toe-to-toe against one another. Now, there isn't anything new with the design of the iPhone 5S. It's actually a recycled one from the iPhone 5 from last year. And with the Note 3, we really appreciate the updated design. Now, instead of having glossy back casing, it's this faux leather material further accented by its stitching pattern. But despite that, we'll still say that the iPhone 5S still has the more attractive design just because of its choice of materials and its sturdier construction. It's that brushed aluminum casing that gives it its solid feel, whereas with the Note 3, it's still mainly plastic. When it comes to the in-the-hand feel, we got to say again, just the iPhone 5S is more forgiving just because it's more compact, whereas with the Note 3, it's still one wide-looking and feeling smartphone. There's no question about it. We can't take our eyes off the display on the Galaxy Note 3. It's just really impressive, especially when you compare it to the iPhone 5S. Now the Retina display is starting to show its age. Nothing has really changed here from last year's model. It's still 4 inches in size, 640 by 1136 pixels. It relies on IPS LCD technology. And the nice thing about that is that between the two, it has the superior outdoor visibility, so we're able to see what's on screen even when the sun's present, whereas with the Galaxy Note 3, its display tends to wash out. On top of that, it produces the more accurate looking colors, but regardless of that, we just still find the Note 3 display to be the more attractive between two. Larger in size, it's 5.7 inches, which is actually larger than the entire dimensions of the iPhone 5S. Top of that, it's Super AMOLED's 1080p resolution, so 1080 by 1920 pixels. Honestly, when it comes to details, it's going to be the Note 3 obviously, but you really can't notice it when you're looking from a normal distance. It's only when we look at the two very close we could see the finer visuals in play with the Note 3's display. And finally, being an AMOLED panel, Super AMOLED, it has all those qualities we like about it. Wide viewing angles, you get that deep black color, and of course those saturated colors. So when you put the two side by side, there's just that nice glow with the Note 3's display. So below their displays, we have their respective home buttons. Now, with the iPhone 5S, it's more recessed than the Note 3. Note 3 actually is more flush to the surface. They're both very springy with their responses, which is great. And with the Note 3, you have the Android back and menu keys surrounding it. The cool thing about the iPhone 5S home button is that it actually incorporates a biometric Touch ID fingerprint sensor, which is another level of security, which allows us to unlock the device and even confirm app purchases. On the opposite side, we naturally find their earpieces, their front-facing cameras, the light and proximity sensors. But the neat thing about the Note 3 is that it packs an LED notification light, and there's also an IR blaster on there too, which allows us to interact with the device by using a variety of different air gestures. So we could wave our hand over the display and basically allow us to do things like go through our photos in the gallery. So if we take a look around the edges of both handsets, we're going to find many commonalities. Of course, on the left side, we have their volume controls. It's narrow on the Note 3, and it's separate and circular in size with the iPhone 5S. Luckily, they're both very springy with responses, but there's more of a distinctive feel with the iPhone 5S set of buttons. And you also have the mute switch there. When it comes to their power buttons, we like both, but again, it's just a more distinct feel of the iPhone 5S button, which really stands out between the two. Other things that they have in common, on the bottom edge, we have their speakers. We have their 3.5mm headset jacks. It's on the bottom on the iPhone 5S. It's on the top of the Note 3. And the thing about the Note 3, it also packs an IR blaster on the top edge, which enables it to double as a universal remote. So definitely a nifty thing to offer. And when it comes to charging data connectivity, we have the Lightning port on the iPhone 5S and a new micro USB 3.0 port on the Note 3, which enables it to charge and sync data faster than previous micro USB ports. In the rear, we have their respective cameras. It's an 8-megapixel iSight camera with dual LED flash on the iPhone 5S, so it has an amber and white tone to give you natural skin tones. And on the Note 3, it's a larger size 13-megapixel autofocus camera with an LED flash. The cool thing about it is on top of shooting 1080p videos, you have also the ability to shoot 4K in 4K resolution too. Honestly, it's something that we continue to appreciate seeing with the Galaxy Note series. With the iPhone 5S, closed design, of course, so no access to its battery, but with the Note 3, you can remove the back cover, we gain access to its 3200 milliamp hour battery, its SIM slot, and also packs along an always useful micro SD card slot to increase its storage capacity. Another piece of gear that adds to the Note 3's arsenal is its unique Pen Stylus. Again, it's not something you tend to see with smartphones, but just a nice offering. And if you're more of a productive type of individual or just a business-oriented one, it's something that really helps you in being organized. On top of that, you can use it to jot down notes. It's pressure sensitive, so depending on how light or how hard you press on the display, it's going to give us different tones and just adds to the overall functionality to the Note 3. So with the software experience, we have iOS 7 powering the iPhone 5S and the Samsung TouchWiz Nature UX experience running on top of Android 4.3 Jelly Bean on the Note 3. Now, when it comes to the visual presentation, we definitely prefer the iPhone 5S with this one here with iOS 7, just because it has a lot of eye candy and also it employs a lot of neat looking animations, which gives it a really brand spanking new feel. Whereas with TouchWiz, it pretty much looks like last year's model. However, when it comes to personalization and depth, there's no question that the Galaxy Note 3 continues to be superior over the iPhone 5S. The nice thing about the iPhone 5S is with this year's model is that you could actually get some live wallpapers instead of static ones that we're normally accustomed to using. With the Note 3 though, it's far more extensive in what it could do. For example, you have all the widgets which are dynamic, so they'll aggregate information like the weather and clock widget, which is pretty nice. Whereas with the iPhone 5S, the only widget here that is dynamic is just the clock. It'll actually tell us what the time is. Aside from that, all the other icons are pretty much static. And on top of that, there's just a whole lot of depth with the experience on the Note 3 that I'll explain here really quick. The Note 3 is just a beast when it comes to the multitasking experience. Sure, you could do the usual standard Android way, which allows us to quickly just switch between the open applications. And the same thing is said about the iPhone 5S. You have these mini windows, which we could move around, but it's not really true multitasking. But the Note 3 really solves that with its new multi-window feature. So basically, we could have two apps running at the same time on top of one another. So basically, if we want to use YouTube and also search the web or browse the web, we have the ability to do that, which is pretty nice. So it's far more functional and also deeper with its offering. And then there's just the host of secondary features on the Note 3 that shows its worth over the iPhone 5S, and I'll talk about them really quickly. The first one here is just the Air View functionality. Basically, with the display technology, it allows us to track our finger or the S Pen. So as we're hovering it, it's pretty useful in many things. Here in the gallery, we're able to actually preview windows. You have also the air gestures in play. So with that IR blaster on the front, we could actually go through the photos by just quickly swiping our hands. If we go to the web browser, there's some other things here in play. Like I said, with the Air View functionality, the S Pen actually acts as a mouse cursor, so it kind of mimics the desktop experience in this regard. And on top of that, it also has a smart scroll, so basically we could rely on our eyes while we tilted the phone up or down to actually scroll. Being the two of the newest smartphones around, they're treated to some of the latest processors in tow. So with the iPhone 5S, it has a one-of-a-kind Apple A7 processor, which is based on 64-bit architecture. So we haven't really seen something like that in the mobile landscape. With the Note 3, it still has an impressive processor of its own. It's the mighty quad-core Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 processor coupled with 3 GB of RAM. Now here in the home screen, we got to say that the two exhibit a good amount of responsiveness, and they both pretty much are really fast devices. But the iPhone 5S just continues to have an overall snappier performance doing other basic tasks like opening apps, navigating through the home screen, stuff like that. With the Note 3, every now and then we'll see just a little bit of a lag or choppiness when navigating around the home screen. Mainly because it has a larger display, we have a more spacious keyboard layout on the Note 3 versus the iPhone 5S. You could see the huge disparity between the two, but with the iPhone 5S though, it just has a really nice autocorrect feature which allows us to type with ease. No worries too. Both are very responsive, so they work for the occasion. With the Note 3, we really appreciate that it has a dedicated row for numbers, and you have also access to some of the punctuations directly from the main layout. Not surprisingly, both handsets are astounding when it comes to their web browsing experience, just because they both feature lightning fast 4G LTE connectivity, you have some really fast page loads, and on top of that you have instant page rendering and also very smooth navigational controls. But just because the Note 3 has that larger display and higher resolution, it just seems more ideal. And when you combine the functionality of the S Pen with the Air View functionality, it just gives us a very close desktop-like experience. Obviously, playing high-definition videos isn't a problem with either device. You could tell the playback is smooth, but for the experience, we're going to go with the Note 3 just because that larger display and just that AMOLED panel really has those rich colors which really catches our attention. On top of that, there's also a host of other functionality that we appreciate on the Note 3. For example, you have the Air View functionality, so you could preview the video ahead of time. And on top of that, you have pop-up play, which again goes on the same premise with multitasking. It just offers a more enhanced experience with that. Now this one's really quick. If you prefer a lot of shooting modes and also access to some manual controls, you'll really appreciate what the Note 3 has to offer with its camera UI. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the iPhone 5S lacks any deep offerings. It's just very basic with what it offers, but anything about it, it's more simplistic, so it gets you down to just taking photos, so you're not hassled with anything else. So how do the cameras of both handsets stack up against one another? Well, honestly, they're pretty much very similar. It's hardly noticeable which is the superior between the two when it comes to outdoor shots. They take some just outstanding looking photos, very sharp with their details, nice natural colors, and exposure seems balanced enough. But when we look very closely, it just seems like the Note 3 is able to capture the sharper, a little bit more details than the iPhone 5S. But the iPhone 5S really shows its worth in lower lighting conditions just because its shots seem to be less prone to any blurring or hazing effects. That's probably attributed to its faster shutter time. We just noticed that the most. On top of that, it just draws out more details than its competitor. And when it comes to their flash, they're both pretty good in producing some very natural skin tones. Equally as compelling is their 1080p video recording quality. Again, really hard to tell which is going to be the better between two when it comes to outdoor shots where the sun is very present. But in lower lighting conditions, it's the iPhone 5S that reigns supreme just because it's just sharper overall. With the Note 3, it just has more noise in its shots, and in turn, it just softens its details. We're going to have to go with the iPhone 5S with call quality just because of the Note 3 at the loudest volume setting, its earpiece tends to have some crackling which kind of distorts the voices. With the iPhone 5S, it just seems very natural and distinctive. And on the other end line, voices tend to sound a little bit more robotic with the Note 3. And the iPhone 5S, again, our callers mentioned they have no issues whatsoever in making out our voice. Power users will especially be astounded by the battery life on the Note 3. It's just far superior, better than the iPhone 5S. Normal usage, we're able to get close to 2 days out of Note 3 versus only a single day on the iPhone 5S. And when we're using it very heavily, we get through a solid 24 hours with a full charge with the Note 3 versus only 10 hours on the iPhone 5S. So naturally, we gotta compare apples to apples, right? Well, the Note 3, when it launches here in the US, is going to support a price point of $300 with a 2-year contract, and that's packing 32 gigabytes of storage. Meanwhile, we know the 32 gigabyte version of the iPhone 5S, also same price point, $300, right? Knowing all that, it just seems as though that the Note 3 is going to give you more bang for the buck. When you look at its spec sheet, the larger and high resolution display, the enhanced experience with the multitasking aspect, and even all the functionalities that come along with the S Pen, it just seems more equipped than what the iPhone 5S has to offer. And the performance side, it pretty much rivals the iPhone 5S in many categories. So if you are a productive type of person, or you love to be organized, or even a business professional, Galaxy Note 3 is obviously your device. On the other hand though, some people just don't want to be bothered with all those features. They just want a simple phone that's easy to use, and with that, naturally it's going to be the iPhone 5S for you. It's just a well-rounded device, and of course with the iOS 7 experience, it's updated, it's refreshing, and it's just still a well-rounded performer. So if you guys want to learn more about either the Apple iPhone 5S or the Samsung Galaxy Note 3, check out our website, PhoneArena.com. It's John V. Thanks for watching, folks.